Datto and Huntress thwart the sale of MSP credentials on the dark web. RocketCyber ships security apps for Office 365, 5G security concerns, and much more. It's ChannelPro Weekly, episode 133, The Ice Cream Truck Conspiracy. Today's episode is sponsored by Corporate Armor. Get free remote support software exclusively from Corporate Armor. Stop spending big money on expensive remote desktop tools and use Corporate Armor Connect and Fix for free. Connect and Fix is secure, reliable remote desktop software that enables you to support clients and fix their technology issues remotely, from anywhere, anytime. Connect and Fix runs in a fast, secure cloud, offering commercial-grade and compliance-friendly remote desktop and support technology for free. It includes features like file transfer, session recording, restart and reboot, and live video and text chat on PC, Mac, and Linux platforms. Users can even share their screens with clients for presentations or training purposes. So stop paying for remote access and support software and switch to Connect and Fix by Corporate Armor. They take the pain out of sourcing IT products. Find them at corporatearmor.com. Again, that's corporatearmor.com. Hello and welcome to ChannelPro Weekly, episode 133. My name is Matt Whitlock, technology editor, online director, and your host of this program for the VARs, the managed service providers, the IT integrators, the managed security solutions providers. If you do technology and you do it with other businesses, you're probably in the right place. Joining me each and every week is the man of the hour, you should have seen him. He just flipped his eyebrows up. It was pretty funny when I said that. He's the guy who's here with me pretty much each and every week, breaking down the news and going over the stories. Executive editor Rich Freeman.
You know, it's. I guess my eyebrows shot up because it's good timing basically that we're recording this show during my hour. This is my hour. So good thing we're doing the show.
I got a press release about which hour was yours, so I thought it would make sense to do the show at this particular time.
Good thinking.
Yeah, indeed. So Rich, you're home today, but I know you're not going to be home tomorrow.
This is true. I'm home today, but I'm packing because I'm heading out to Chicago to visit you and your lovely family.
Yay! It's going to be a lot of fun. And folks, Rich is going to be shooting his 5-minute roundup segment with Eric Simpson. So if you don't know, Rich and Eric Simpson do a 5-minute roundup on YouTube every week, right?
Correct.
Yep. And he made the mistake of telling me he's going to have to shoot that here in advance. So I have ample time to figure out how to mess with him while he's doing this.
Now, just for context here, so this is my second visit to Matt's home. A little over a year ago, I went out there. And I didn't actually give him any advance warning that I needed to shoot this video. But while I was there at his house, I said, hey, can I go upstairs and borrow the setup that you're looking at right now if you're watching this on video and record this thing? And he said, sure. And then in the middle of this recording, all of a sudden Matt shows up and he's like putting this funny hat on my head and, and enjoying himself and creating some fun and some mischief. This time, Matt, I was just not thinking. I told him days in advance I was going to need to do this, and Matt has way too much time to think about what he's going to do. So I encourage you, even if you don't really have much interest in the 5-minute roundup, you want to check that out. It's going to go live on Friday, and you will see what he came up with and how I dealt with it.
Yeah, I'm going to try to get my son involved. I have a lot of ideas floating up around in my head, so. It's gonna be interesting. and folks, this will be the last time Rich gives me any advance warning about anything, because I can come up with a lot on the top of my head. I can come up with some crazy stuff if you actually give me a few minutes to really think about it. So that'll be fun. We're looking forward to having you out. I'll take some pictures. I know I'm gonna take Rich to a hockey game, and we're gonna go downtown to Chicago, and we're gonna putz around down there. I'm hoping the weather is cooperative. We're also going to be doing a work-related thing on Friday. Rich, tell them what we're going to be doing.
So for regular listeners, regular viewers, just a few episodes ago, we had Joanna Sabrin on the show. She is ChannelPro's very first Peer of the Year. This is a new honor that we've created and introduced this year, where we take the best peer-to-peer story from our magazine. Every month we have a a story in which someone like you, a VAR, an MSP, et cetera, shares a best practice. We took the best story from 2019 in terms of the story that we felt was most applicable to the biggest portion of our audience and could really have an impact on their business. That was Joanna. She is our very first peer of the year. She is based in downtown Chicago. So as long as I'm going to be there visiting Matt, we are going to present her with her plaque, her peer of the year plaque, which will say on it very clearly, this is the inaugural award. She is winner number one. But we will be doing this every year, folks. And keep an eye out on the ChannelProNetwork.com website and our newsletters because we will be soliciting nominations for next year's Peer of the Year. But Joanna is our very first winner, and I'm really looking forward to visiting her at her office and giving her her plaque.
Yeah, it's a great award, and it's going to be really really great choosing that each and every year because there's so many great peers that we could talk about and give that award to. So it's going to be fun to see who comes out on top each year. Yeah, so cool stuff. So Rich, we do have a lot in the show to go over. We've got a note in here. We want to talk about our Libsyn move again, just in case folks had any issues with that. Rich, do you want to tell them about that, or you want me to?
Why don't you do it?
So last week we decided to change our podcast host. We don't like to talk about the inner workings of stuff here all that much. We just like things to kind of happen. But we did make a major change and move to a new host. We moved to Libsyn as our podcast host. We are hoping that the transition was almost invisible to the vast majority of you. But if any of you had any issues, or as we said last week, if you can't hear us now, you got to let us know. But if you're listening to this, you're probably fine. This will not affect those who are subscribed on YouTube if you watch the video version, but if you watch the audio version or listen to the audio version, I'm sorry. And if you had any issues, you could try to unsubscribe and resubscribe. But ideally, nothing changed. But it does a lot for us to get serving this off of our own infrastructure for various reasons, and to help us kind of see how many listeners we have and helping us grow, knowing what we need to have in order to grow the show in the future. So I don't have anything else to say about that. Rich, do you?
No, just that, one of the other nice benefits of making that move is we're finally on Spotify, as we noted the last episode. Libsyn was able to help make that happen. And as far as I know, I don't know if you've heard any different, Matt, but I have yet to hear anyone say, hey, what happened to the podcast? So there's no indication that anyone has experienced trouble, but we do just want to kind of flag there's been a change in case something is different for you.
Yeah, I have gotten zero reported issues, which has made me very, very happy. And you're right. And welcome to those who are listening to us on Spotify. You can find us there now. Year and a half of sending emails to Spotify to realize that no one actually works there. All emails go into a dark black hole that are not responded to. But if you subscribe to one of these big hosts, it's like 2 clicks. Rich, a year and a half selling emails, and then 1 hour where our show is in Spotify after clicking 2 buttons in Libsyn. I got to tell you, they got that worked out to a science. but glad we're there. So if you're a Spotify user and or subscriber, you can subscribe to us there and listen each and every week. And if you're not a Spotify listener, hey, go to Apple Podcasts, go to Google Podcasts, go to Stitcher, go to wherever you get your podcasts or aggregate them from, and subscribe to us there. Leave us a good rating and a review if you can, please. It actually does go a long way of helping others find the show. And hey, if you are a Channel 4 Weekly listener and you haven't for a while, tell your colleagues, your friends, your family. If they're in IT, I guess it would make sense to tell your friends and family. But certainly your colleagues and your boss and anyone else who'd be interested in keeping up with the IT news as it relates to you, the great managed service providers and B2B integrators. So, Rich, we don't have we have 7 stories we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about Datto and Huntress. We're going to talk about RocketCyber. We got a little bit of story here about 5G and some security concerns about that and customer experience. But and we also have an interview, maybe, Rich.
We do.
We do. So we're hoping. It's kind of hard to say, but we should have an interview coming up here with Poly, formerly Polycom. But we're doing that tomorrow, and there's some logistical timing that has to work out. So later in the show, I might say, hey, guess what? That interview is like next week. But we'll just wait and find out. This is what we get when we split the show up over 2 days. All right. But Rich, you know what? It was another holiday, another important day that just passed. Rich, you know what day it was?
Super Bowl Sunday.
Yes, Super Bowl Sunday was. So we could talk about football if you like. Are you? I know you're a Seahawks guy, right?
I am.
So all right. So we'll talk about the Super Bowl Sunday for a second. It actually overlaps with another day that I was thinking about. It also reminded me of something that I wanted to talk about. But all right, Super Bowl Sunday. Where were you? What'd you do? What'd you think of the game?
Well, I was just home here. I did not go to some big Super Bowl party this year. And I would say I was happy with the outcome of the game because, of course, the 49ers are hated division rivals of my Seahawks. And so and I should say I have a bunch of friends in the Bay Area who are just arrogant as hell about the 49ers. So it would have been intolerable for me to watch them hoist the Lombardi Trophy. And therefore, I was all about the Kansas City Chiefs rally in the fourth quarter there, which was very exciting. Congratulations to our new NFL champs, and to all of you Chiefs fans out there in our listener base. Thank you for sparing me the agony of watching the 49ers win the Super Bowl.
Awesome. Great roundup. I was at a Super Bowl party. The family went to some friends, and there were lots of people there. And Rich, we engorged ourselves on a massive amount of food and calories. I didn't necessarily go for the game, I'm not a big football person, so I didn't really have a lot at stake. I decided to root for Kansas City because go Midwest, I'm from the Midwest, so I figured, yay, middle of the country. So that was fun. I watched probably 3 minutes of the game at the party in the beginning, and then when we left, I remember when we left the party because they do Super Bowl Sunday on a Sunday evening, which. Why they don't start the game a little earlier, I don't know, or move it to Saturday. But my kids had school the next day, so we had to come home a little early. And I remember when we left, it was 20-10. The San Francisco 49ers were in the lead. And then when we got home, somewhere in between driving from there to there, which is a very, very short drive, they were up. The Kansas City had scored, and it was 17-10. So we decided to watch the last 6 minutes of the game, and that was really the 6 minutes of the game to watch because that was the most exciting when they just really turned it around and pounded the 49ers that last go. So that was pretty fun. That was my football experience for the year.
Well, it was a good time to check into the NFL.
Right. Yeah, and I will probably do so again for 6 minutes at the next Super Bowl. While I go to the parties just so I can eat lots of stuff. Now, did you make the normal, the snacks that you would normally have on the Super Bowl? Do you have wings? Did you have, nachos? What'd you have?
Just beer. I did not prepare a snack. I was sort of, in and out of the room and doing things. So yeah, no special, certainly no wings.
Certainly no wings. Well, we'll have to solve that problem maybe next year. We'll get some wings delivered, so you're good to go. But it was Super Bowl Sunday, but it was also another day. Rich, what other day was it?
Was it Groundhog Day?
It was Groundhog Day. It was Groundhog Day. One of those holidays that's been around for a very long time. In fact, I can even give you a little trivia question about when it first started. But it was last century. Actually, the 1800s. So it's one that's been around for a long time, but it was a holiday that was popularized by a movie in 1993 starring Bill Murray. And ever since then, the town of Punxsutawney, which does this ceremony every year and has done so for a long time, has become a major tourist attraction because of how much attention this movie has brought to that particular holiday. And so, Rich, do you follow Groundhog Day? Do you know if Punxsutawney Phil saw his shadow this year or not?
I don't actually. I don't know what the groundhog did this year.
So according to Phil, we are going to have an early spring.
Okay.
And I always forget if that meant he saw his shadow or didn't see a shadow. I think he didn't see a shadow, therefore early spring. I think. Yes. You would know better than I would. or not.
Yeah.
Folks, which is it? Is it Phil sees the shadow or not? Which one is which? Let us know in the comments, either on YouTube or send us an email, podcast@channelpronetwork.com. So I thought it would be fun if, and now you've seen the Groundhog Day movie, right?
Many times, yep.
Yeah, great movie. Love it. I actually met somebody the other day that is a friend of mine who has not seen it, and I stared at her like she was from another planet. Because it is a great movie, and Bill Murray is just awesome. So, and the reason why this got brought up is there was a commercial in the Super Bowl with where they kind of created the scene of Groundhog Day, and Bill Murray was back, but it was like a Jeep commercial. But they went back to the place where they originally filmed it, and had a commercial about it, which was really fun to see. Did you see that commercial?
I did. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, really, really good. So I thought, Rich, it would be fun to put you on the spot and give you a little Groundhog Day movie trivia. See if you know the movie as well as you think you do, because you say you've seen it many, many times.
I have, and I'm feeling relatively confident here, but we'll see. But this could be a humbling moment.
It could very well be. I have also seen it many times, so I do know all of these, but we'll see if you do. So are you ready for a little just a little trivia about Groundhog Day itself? The Punxsutawney Phil ceremony on Groundhog Day became first official in what year?
Well, you gave me a clue there. I'm in the right century, but other than that, I have absolutely no clue. So I'm just going to randomly say 1872.
Very close, very close. According to the internets, now this one I did have to look up because I didn't know, but according to the internets, it was the first official Punxsutawney Phil ceremony took place in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, in 1887.
It was close.
7 years after there was like a group of people from that area who would go into the forest on Groundhog Day in search of groundhogs. I guess it kind of started from that. People had nothing to do in 1880, I guess. But there was like a groundhog club, and then it kind of evolved into this. All right, but about the movie. Are you ready?
Yes, bring it.
Question number 1. Though set in Punxsutawney, Pennsylvania, where the real Punxsutawney Phil is located, the Groundhog Day ceremony in the movie was filmed in what Illinois community?
So for the benefit of our listeners and our viewers, I know this, but I know this only because I learned it from our colleague Daisy Shelley earlier this week. So that all that stuff that's supposedly in Punxsutawney was actually shot in Woodstock, Illinois.
That is correct. And Woodstock is a mere hop, skip, and a jump from where I live. About 30 minutes tops to get to the square from here. And I was in high school when they were shooting that movie. It was 1992. I was in junior high or high school, one of the two. But I remember when they were filming that movie here. It was a big deal. There was actually a couple scenes that were shot in Cary. A lot of the movie was all basically filmed along northern Illinois. Cary, Illinois had a scene. They were doing it in a warehouse somewhere in town. No one knew where it was until after the movie was over. And then there was a scene shot in Loves Park, Illinois, which is literally 15 minutes from my house. And that's where they shot the quarry scene where he drove the truck off the quarry or off the cliff, if you will. So yeah, all that was shot kind of like in my backyard. So that's around here. Groundhog Day is a very big deal because it was, it's kind of like a local thing.
And they shot the Super Bowl ad there too, right?
Yes, they did return to Woodstock for that. There was some local news fervor when Bill Murray was back in town. But yeah, they took over Woodstock again. And there's actually like little landmarks in Woodstock. And, for your next trip out, Rich, we're going to have to take a visit out there. Although actually we could. We have some time Saturday. If you wanted to see the Woodstock Square, they have like Ned's Corner where they have like a little plaque and they have like a little signs like, Bill Murray stood here, and you can actually see the square for yourself. So
that is hilarious. Yeah, we'll have to see if we can fit it in.
Maybe we will do that. It would be good times. All right. In the movie, Phil was quite the expert in what TV trivia game?
Oh, gosh. Already I'm in trouble. He was TV trivia game?
5, 4.
Jeopardy. I don't know.
It was Jeopardy. Good guess. Yep, he was sitting in the area of his bed and breakfast, and there was a bunch of people watching Jeopardy, and he had seen that particular episode at that point probably 800 times, and was saying the answers even before they were saying the questions, which was really funny. All right, what was the song that played on the alarm clock every morning he woke up?
I've Got You, Babe, Sonny and Cher.
Sonny and Cher, I've Got You, Babe. That is correct. What did Phil's inebriated friend try to order from the policeman?
Flapjacks.
Flapjacks specifically, yes. One of my absolute favorite scenes is when Bill Murray, the drunk guy, says flapjacks, and Bill Murray looks at the officers and goes, "Is it too early for flapjacks?"
Yeah.
Love that scene. All right, last question. You're doing well. 4 for 5 so far. In the movie, Phil electrocutes himself with a toaster while sitting in the bathtub. How many slices of bread did the toaster hold?
Oh, gosh. Again, I guess. I mean, I remember the scene, but I can't picture the toaster, so I'm going to say 4.
It was a 4-slice toaster. Ladies and gentlemen, Rich Freeman, Groundhog Day trivia. All 5 for 5.
I had to guess and reason my way to correct answers, but hey.
Yes, and that toaster actually had bread in it. He put down 4 slices of bread, even though that was so unnecessary to electrocute yourself. You may as well toast some bread while you're being zapped to death.
Sure.
In case you get hungry. So, all right. Well, that was fun. That was a fun little side segue. So why don't we go ahead and transition from Groundhog Day to the news. Datto and Huntress Labs. I have some collaboration going. Tell us about that, Rich.
So this is really interesting. It's interesting for a number of different reasons. This gets us into the zone of talking again about an issue that we've discussed many times on the podcast already, just in the last few months. The fact that hackers are going after MSPs in a big way because there's a lot of valuable data that they can get by breaking into your business system. So this relates to that. This gets us an opportunity to talk a little bit about an organization that's been operating sort of quietly behind the scenes, involving some very big names in the managed services software world, who are sharing information, trying to counter some of these security threats. So for those reasons alone, it's interesting, but it's also interesting because there's a sort of cloak and dagger element to this. So what we're talking about here is just this week, and this actually happened a long time ago, but it only became public this week. We learned that Datto and Huntress, with an important assist from ConnectWise, thwarted an attempt by a hacker to sell some stolen credentials that they had purloined from an MSP, basically. So let me just rewind the clock here to last summer. Some executives from Huntress and Ryan Weeks, who's the Chief Information Security Officer at Datto, were talking with one another, and they agreed that the only way the good guys beat the bad guys in the fight against cybercrime is if the good guys are cooperating with one another, sharing information, tipping one another off on potential threats, and collaborating on solutions and remediation. And so they thought, we need to get some of the big names in this industry together to do that. And they organized a meeting. It was actually at Datto headquarters in Norwalk, Connecticut. This took place last July. Datto and Huntress obviously were there. So too were senior people from Kaseya and ConnectWise. And they agreed we're going to form what's called a information sharing and analysis center, which is just this concept in the security world of a group of people who are going to share information with one another and collaboratively address threats. So 4 charter members, July 2019. When I learned of this group's existence, it was at the IT Nation Connect event, the ConnectWise show, very late in October. They had about 20 vendors at that time who were part of this, what they call MSP ISAC or ISAC. So that group is up and running. Essentially all it really is when we're talking about collaborating and sharing information, they set up a Slack channel. And they were kind of notifying one another when they saw something that was potentially significant. So now you're in early October, and an employee at Datto is kind of rooting around a little bit in the dark web just to see what's out there and could be significant. And they see an ad, essentially, a listing from a hacker saying, I've broken into an MSP's systems. I've got credentials. So this was a system, like a management console that was used to manage virtual private servers. And this hacker says, I've broken in. I have access to everything in this management console, including the virtual private servers for about 20 different SMBs. We're talking law firms and accounting practices and at least one pharmaceutical company. I am selling it all for $600 worth of Bitcoins. Who wants it? So Datto takes this information to the MSP ISAC and says, we don't know who it is because the ad doesn't identify the MSP, but somewhere out in the world, and the ad actually said it was in the eastern US. Somewhere in the eastern United States, there's an MSP who's been hacked, doesn't know it, and their information is now for sale on the dark web. And so the Huntress folks went to work. Now, for folks who aren't familiar with Huntress, this is a threat hunting organization. It's run by people who were in cyber ops in the military, worked for the NSA, very, very skilled and experienced in dealing with the cybercrime underworld. And so they lurked around a little bit, learned what they could about this person who had put the ad up there, and then eventually they contacted this person. And they were using an assumed identity, obviously, but they said, hey, you know, we might be interested in buying this for, say, $500 worth of Bitcoin. But first, we want a screenshot proving you have what you say you do, and we want to know how you did it. And sure enough, this hacker, who went by the handle Wozniak, responded to them, said, here's a screenshot to prove that I have done what I said I could do, and we got it through phishing. So we phished the credentials out of an employee of this MSP, and here's your screenshot. Using clues that they were able to get from that screenshot, the Huntress folks were able to figure out who this MSP is. Now, at that point, interesting little wrinkle to the story, that, you know, what they want to do is call the MSP and say, hey, you've got this very serious problem. But they're imagining a scenario, and you in our audience, you can put yourself in this position. The phone rings, a vendor maybe you've never heard of is on the other end, and they say, you've been hacked, and we can help you fix it. You're probably going to hang up the phone. Like, what the heck is this about? And so what the Huntress folks did instead is there were other clues in the screenshot that led them to believe that this partner, this MSP, was a ConnectWise partner. And so they went to the chief information security officer of ConnectWise. They said, here's what's going on. We need you guys to reach out to the MSP and tell them this is an issue because they'll believe it coming from you. And ConnectWise went ahead and did that. And then it took a while. So I should say I first learned about all of this at that IT Nation Connect show. So I, you know, more or less while it was happening, a week or two after all this was going on. And at that point, they were still in the process of fixing the issue with the MSP and making sure all that MSP's customers were okay. And so they told me all about it. The Huntress folks did, but they said, please don't report on it because it'll tip off the hacker and then bad things will happen all around. So I've been kind of sitting on this news since right around Halloween last year. And they finally gotten everything kind of lined up. They went public with the news this week. And so, I mean, it's an interesting story in a lot of ways. The details involved are just kind of interesting, and the, like I said, the cloak and dagger of how Huntress, you know, cracked the identity or essentially was able to figure out who this MSP is. It's a sobering thing, and I have a link in my article on this to a blog post that Huntress put up yesterday about this, and I encourage you to click through and look at that because there are all sorts of screen grabs that Huntress collected of, you know, the original ad announcing that this MSP's data was for sale and other communications with it. It's a sobering thing to see, to actually look at a screenshot of a dark web ad saying, hey, I stole everything of value from this MSP and I'm putting it up for sale now. And, you know, again, it was a phishing attack that allowed this hacker to get in. It's just a further illustration, if any was needed. MSPs are in the crosshairs. That means doesn't matter how big or small you are. You absolutely have to follow all of the best practices that you advise your customers to follow. And the other thing that's, you know, interesting here, and I mean, this is a further illustration of that point that the folks at Huntress and Datto were saying, which is just the way we win in a situation like this is by sharing information and collaborating. It was Datto finding the problem, conveying it to Huntress, and then Huntress stepping in and using its expertise solve the issue that made the positive, the happy outcome, if you will, of the story possible.
Yeah, so I'm glad they were able to get what they needed to figure out which MSP it was and mitigate this. There's a little bit of concern here, though, is now that that's been done, and they went public with a story where we know that Huntress went and kind of posed as a buyer. Don't you think that now anybody who's looking to sell credentials is going to be far more careful about sharing screenshots and figuring out who they're talking to? So while it worked this time, I have a feeling this may not work again.
Well, it's interesting because, and again, this is all kind of detailed in the Huntress blog post, so another good reason to go check that out. But the impression one gets reading that is that the bad guys are already kind of on to the fact that there are people surveilling them. So with the screenshot, just as a for example, this was sent to Huntress in this platform, Wicker, I believe it's called. But I mean, the attacker was deliberately using a venue to deliver that screenshot that would let them know if a screen grab had been captured. So they were obviously aware of, concerned about the possibility that somebody who's not who they say they is could be capturing this screenshot and using it. And so a very easy solution to that problem, they didn't do a screen grab on their PC at Huntress. They just took their phone out and took a picture of what was on the computer display. But so some indication there that the bad guys are already on to the fact that there could be people monitoring them. And then the other thing that is mentioned in the blog post is that, and you can actually see this if you look at the messages that Huntress sent to the attacker. They deliberately wrote it in a way that made it sound like they're not an English native speaker. And they also dropped in these little subtle references to how they were going to transfer their euros into bitcoins. And they did little things to kind of indicate that they were not in the U.S. because according to Huntress, you will probably not hear back from a hacker who thinks you are in the U.S. Anyone in the U.S. is assumed to be potentially dangerous by a hacker. And so Huntress was trying to appear to be from someplace else.
Interesting. Now, the hacker used the name Wozniak. Are we sure that it actually wasn't Steve Wozniak who was doing this?
We are not. We're not sure.
Just kidding, Steve. We know you're not a nefarious hacker from foreign lands. No, it's a good story. Is this something that they're doing a lot of, monitoring the dark web for credentials for sale and trying to intercept them before they're sold, or was this kind of everything lined up in order to figure it out in advance kind of thing?
So I do know. I mean, it's very much what Huntress does, how they make money. It's is watching out for threats like this. So I do know that they are continually monitoring the dark web for this kind of thing. And I should say, by the way, to your earlier point about now that this has been exposed, maybe it's not possible for Huntress or anyone else to do this kind of sleuthing again. Wozniak, at some point in between the discovery of the identity of this MSP and now, Wozniak listed another MSP's data, like a bigger MSP's data. But it's a safe bet. Wozniak is not going to be responding. They're going to be a lot more cautious in terms of who he or she does business with. Well,
that's what I was saying. I'm like, I think if I was a hacker and I had this now and I've read this story and I get a message, it's like, yeah, show me proof of this, proof of this, proof of this. I'm going to be like, I'm not going to send you screenshots, or at least I'm going to be much more careful about what is seen in the screenshots to make it unidentifiable on what MSP it might actually be. Because that's the problem when you're selling the keys to the castle, and inside the castle is everybody's houses, right? Once the key to the castle is removed, everyone else inside is safe, right?
Well, I will say this here, and this will be a little teaser for our next episode too. Hang on to that question. Now, I mean, actually, as we're talking here right now, as soon as we're done recording, I have an interview scheduled with Kyle Hanselman, the CEO of Huntress, to talk about this story. But he is also going to be on our next podcast episode to do an interview segment with us. So you will have a chance to ask him to kind of talk through the thinking that goes into do we or do we not go public with this information. I attended a talk Kyle gave at that AVIC conference I was at a few weeks ago, and he presented information about all sorts of different, vulnerabilities in products that people listening right now use, and MSPs who have been, they are continually seeing stuff over there that could potentially be a problem. And they don't necessarily broadcast everything they know all the time. They act behind the scenes to deal with these issues. But this is a little bit different, for them to decide, hey, let's kind of call this out a little bit and use it as a lesson for MSPs. And yeah, let's ask them next week to talk about that.
Absolutely will. That'll be a very fascinating interview to have. So kudos for tracking him down and for getting him on the show next week. That'll be great.
And I thank him in advance for making time to be with us, because it's a busy time, obviously, over at Huntress. But he was very happy to do it, and so yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, episode 134, folks. Definitely tune in for that. All right, our next story is RocketCyber. They've shipped some security apps for Office 365. Why don't you tell us about that?
So this is it's kind of a big deal for RocketCyber and their partners. So for anyone not familiar with RocketCyber, and I should say, when I was reporting on this story yesterday, it reminded me how young a company RocketCyber is. They only came out of stealth mode in November 2018, so they're 15 months old at this point. And basically, the original concept, and they've pretty much stayed true to this, was they wanted to create a security solution that was going to allow MSPs who are not deep in security to create a cybersecurity kind of practice for their customers relatively quickly. They wanted to make it painless, essentially, for MSPs to deliver some relatively sophisticated security services. And so they created this app-based platform. I forget how many apps they had originally. Today it's 19, and they cover very specific different functions. The way the sort of core, legacy plan with them works is you can decide which ones of these apps you want to use. They all kind of snap together. The pricing model, basically, and it varies a little bit by app, but it's generally $1 per device or user per month. And so the more apps you use, the more you're going to be paying, and so on. They also, I should say, have a managed SOC service. So the original model was, here are our security apps. You can run those for your customers for $1 a month, et cetera. They later on came out with this managed SOC service. If you want our SOC to run these apps for you and notify you when we see something significant, tell you how to remediate that, that's a different subscription plan, but you can do that as well with them. So up until this week, everything that RocketCyber has offered has been around endpoint protection. And what they announced this week is they have now moved into cloud security as well. And so they introduced 3 new apps, all of which are for Office 365. Now, there's one that kind of does some log analysis. There's another one that does log monitoring. There's another one that looks at the Office 365 Secure Score data, which I'm sure most folks in the audience know about, but Microsoft has this Secure Score service for Office 365 that kind of measures you against, or measures a particular account against security best practices, shows you areas where you can improve. So as I tick through all those different things that the RocketCyber apps do, you're probably thinking to yourself, I can do all of that through Office 365. Why do I need RocketCyber's help? The big thing, the big value add here, biggest value add that RocketCyber is bringing to the table is there is no consolidated multi-tenant management console for Office 365 today. So you can get all of this information that RocketCyber is presenting to you through these apps, but you have to go account to account to account to get that information, or create PowerShell scripts and pull all that into some management console of your own. But it doesn't scale well. It's not terribly practical. So the real biggest value add RocketCyber is bringing to the table here is that they are now providing you with that centralized multi-tenant console that brings all of that data together for you in one place and makes it easier for you to consume. So they were doing endpoint protection before, they're moving into cloud, and then the only last thing to say about the story is within, I believe, a matter of days, if not weeks, they're going to be adding another app that will do firewall log monitoring, and that will be their first move into network security. They want to have products basically in all three of those security pillars: endpoint, cloud, and network.
As someone who's a little less familiar with RocketCyber, now it sounds like these are all monitoring and reporting tools,
Yeah,
not necessarily mitigation or tools that take action themselves. Is that correct?
that is correct. Yeah, and it's particularly true of these Office 365 apps. They're not blocking anything, but they're providing you information that you can use to take action.
And is the goal of RocketCyber eventually to be a little more comprehensive in terms of what these particular apps do, or is monitoring really just the primary need in Office 365?
Well, I mean, most of what RocketCyber has done until now has been around monitoring. That's been now they have an EDR, an endpoint detection and response service as well that I know less about. That came out at some point in the last year or so. But threat monitoring is sort of, what they decided to focus on in the early going. I don't honestly know if they plan to go beyond monitoring and get more into being able to, act on or shut down some of this stuff proactively.
And the pricing for this, you said it used to be $1 a user. By adding up more functionality, is this priced separately, or is this just now included with other things that they were doing?
So if you are on the do-it-yourself, the original model there where you're running the software, they call that their professional plan, then you're paying $1 per Office 365 account per month. If you're on their managed SOC plan, as far as I know, they're just kind of rolling that in. So whatever you're paying now, you keep paying, but you're also, in addition to services you were getting before, I believe you're now getting this Office 365 service.
Very cool. All right. Well, we will link to this article. There is actually a lot more details here in this article than I think we touched on here. So we will put a link to this in the show notes. So if you're listening on a audio device, you can go to channelpronetwork.com and find the show notes for this particular episode 133. And then you'll be able to follow along and find links to all the articles and stories that we're talking about. So that way you can get more information and follow along as we go. All right, well, we got a couple other bigger stories we want to talk about. And, 5G is in the news and it's something everyone is talking about. But we have an article here that's going to talk about some of the security concerns of 5G. Rich, what should I be worried about? Because I'm a worrywart. And I'm going to sit here and totally freaking out like, oh, my God, 5G is coming.
Yeah, and you know what? It's we shouldn't anticipate or frighten anyone that doom and gloom is on the way. But there are some very serious security implications to 5G that channel pros in particular are going to need to be aware of. And I mean, it all kind of comes back to the same things that make 5G so great. So it's the speed, and it's the sort of distributed model. Where it enables a lot more computing to happen out at the edge of the network because of the high bandwidth connectivity and so on. All of that is phenomenal. I think it's going to be fascinating to see the different kinds of solutions that become possible once 5G is in the mainstream, next year, say, or the year after that. But there are going to be some very serious security implications as well. And part of that relates to the speed. Because basically, any kind of threat that could potentially propagate already today is going to be able to get itself out to all sorts of different devices, all of those IoT devices that are going to be connecting to 5G networks going forward. It's going to be getting out there that much faster. And then because there is all of this hugely high bandwidth connectivity out at the edge of the network now, there will be more workloads out there as well, which in a lot of ways is a great thing. But it also kind of creates this distributed security burden where you've got to be able to protect all those different devices and endpoints. And, the one, maybe security advantage to the traditional cloud computing kind of model where you've got a big data center and that's where everything is centralized. That's one location that you kind of need to protect. If you're taking some of the work that today is happening in a data center and moving it out to the edge, then you've got to be prepared to secure the edge a little bit better as well. And so that's all stuff, that people in the industry are very aware of, and 5G carriers and security companies are already introducing products and taking steps that are designed to tackle some of these issues. Verizon, companies like Cradlepoint, there are solutions out there that are really kind of focusing on this threat right now. But especially right now, before 5G is sort of ubiquitous out there, this is a good time for channel pros to be kind of studying up on some of the security implications for their customers.
I also hear that 5G should be of concern because it might give you brain cancer.
I hadn't heard that myself, but brain cancer is a problem.
Yes, it would be a big problem. Yeah, obviously, this is in the news practically every week, especially as IoT begins to proliferate at the rate in which it is, and 5G networks being rolled out to, and that's really the underlying mesh that makes IoT really work. Because without 5G and the amount of connectivity that it provides, IoT is a little bit, it isn't going to be as big and robust as it is. But there are a lot of security concerns, for sure. Now, is there any advice in here about for an MSP who might be seeing some IoT in their customers' deployments and need to react to the security? How do they get started? What do they need to learn? What do they need to know?
Well, I mean, in terms of some things that they can investigate and consider doing, and the one that probably comes to mind first for a lot of folks is a really good one, which is network segmentation. Although there is some advice in this article that says actually you might want to think about going beyond segmenting the network and actually creating an entirely separate network for 5G connected IoT devices, just to, for the extra little bit of safety there. But that idea of isolating some of this potentially vulnerable equipment from the rest of the network is a good idea. And then, there's this concept of zero trust network access that we've actually written about, I think, in the last year in ChannelPro. And that's another good thing to study up on, learn about, see if there are ways to kind of implement that in the end user environments that you support. Where you're basically restricting access to a whitelist. Essentially, you're not assuming much of anything in terms of who should or shouldn't be allowed access to particular assets. So those are the two things in this relatively brief article that we call out.
Yeah, it's definitely an area that we're talking about. We actually have an entire website devoted to IoT, and this is the kind of stuff that they would cover there. It's called iotplaybook.com. So make sure that you tune into that, as well as the ChannelProNetwork.com, where we also have plenty of stories about IoT and particularly security-related ones. And keep your eyes out and learn the best practices on how to adapt and deal with IoT and security as 5G networks roll out en masse. Anything else you want to say about that, Rich?
No, we'll have a link to this story here in the show sheet, and you can kind of take a look at that too.
Excellent. So the next article that we're talking about, we were a little late publishing this article, Rich. This article came out in the year 1401 AD, or maybe BC, back when the Greek Romans were. I don't know my history dates, Rich, but this talks about customer experience being the next big thing, as in like we want to make customers happy, which business owners are just now figuring out, apparently. But I thought they figured that back out in like ancient Roman times.
Well, so one good reason to follow the link to this story in the show sheet and read it is that it does a pretty good job of distinguishing customer experience from customer satisfaction. So customer satisfaction has been part of doing business forever. But customer experience is this concept or a concept that is much newer, and it relates to a phenomenon that you don't hear about as much anymore as you used to. This whole idea of the consumerization of IT and so on. The expectations that have been created in the world about ease of use, friction-free interaction. especially as more and more business gets done from a smartphone or a tablet or even a computer, but doesn't involve a face-to-face interaction or even a phone call. This whole idea of really kind of thinking your way through what people sometimes call the customer journey, from the very, very first time they encounter your brand to what happens when they go to your website to investigate the brand, to what happens when they place an order. How long does it take that order to get fulfilled? What's the experience like of receiving that product, either in the mail or online, and installing that? What's it like once it's up and running in terms of the support and assistance that you get? Customers today, buyers today, and there's a lot of data to reinforce this from CompTIA and others. Customer experience, what it's like to interact with your business, weighs more heavily than you might think it does on a lot of purchasing decisions these days. And so it really is something that CompTIA, among others, believes channel pros need to be more focused on than they are today. This is not just, how long does it take us to resolve a ticket? How long does it take us to resolve a phone call? All that stuff is important and it factors into customer experience, but you need to be thinking much more comprehensively about the experience of doing business with your company and whether that invites somebody to do more business with you and remain loyal to you, or encourages them to maybe look around for somebody else or just take their business elsewhere.
So give us a couple of examples of what customer experience related things people should work on.
Well, the easiest way to do this is just to kind of think about maybe bad experiences that you've had, outside the IT industry in your own life, right? Where maybe you hear about something from a friend or see something online that sounds interesting, and you decide to go check it out, and you go to a website, and the website is so poorly designed that you can't find the information that you're looking for. Or you can find some information, but you have a question, and you can't for the life of you figure out how to ask the question. Or you go ahead and ask the question, but nobody ever responds to it. Think about all the little things that are frustrating in your life that might feel like they're outside the realm of customer service or customer satisfaction today. But that could, be discouraging for somebody who could potentially be a customer or is already a customer, but just finds it a little harder than they would like to get things done with you and get a response from you to get information that they need. There are so many of the managed services tools out there now provide these self-service portals that allow the customer to go online and look up the status of a ticket or something like that. They don't have to call the help desk. That's a great experience for a lot of customers. They like that, being in control of that, being able to get the information on demand when they want to. And so it's another little example of what we're talking about.
So the article touches on something that I think is really important when you're talking about customer experience, and that's how customer experience and social media interconnect.
Right.
Because if you don't provide a good customer experience, that customer can just go to the social networks, and today any one person can cause a huge uproar and really impact your ability to create new customers. Because if people are researching you and want to do business with you, everybody's kind of used to going and doing reviews. And I think people have gotten a little bit more jaded about believing everything they see in user reviews and on social media, because anybody who may even be on the wrong, who has an axe to grind, is going to go and badmouth something. And I think you have a little bit of that, but some of those reviews can be very damaging to your ability to get new business.
Absolutely. And the other important thing to say about social media is that's part of the customer experiences as well. There are buyers out there who want to be able to interact with you that way, direct message you in Twitter or what have you. I mean, do you provide that ability? Can they reach you the way that they want to reach you? That's part of creating a positive customer experience.
Yeah, it's certainly an important area to look at. And I think, and I was kind of joking a little bit in the beginning of the thing. I don't think just today businesses have just figured out that they need to focus on more than customer satisfaction, but also customer experience. Companies have been doing this for years and years. I mean, especially the larger companies who interact with lots of customers, I think, are always trying to make sure that the experience as a whole is a positive one. Maybe in the IT area, it might be a little bit of a newer focus for some. But I definitely agree that as we move forward, experience is going to make a big difference. And those who provide the better experiences as a whole are going to have an easier time drawing more customers down the road.
And I'll just quickly say one additional point that this story will link you to from the show sheet makes is that part of taking customer experience seriously is developing and tracking some metrics that help you kind of assess customer experience. So on top of whatever business metrics you're using right now to measure the health and the success of your business, it's a good idea to kind of work in some customer experience related metrics like the Net Promoter Score, which a lot of people are familiar with. But there's another one the article discusses called Customer Effort Score, which is just where you're asking the customer how hard was it.
They can't use that, Rich, because the acronym would then be CES and they'll get sued.
So stay away from the acronym, but think about maybe measuring that. You're essentially asking the end user, how hard was it to do whatever you just did with us? And you can set a threshold, a target for how hard it ought to be, and see how well you're tracking against that.
Yeah, you know what else is a good way to improve customer experience? Coupons. People love coupons. So if you can introduce coupons into your business flow, I think it will make your customer experience better.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's a good one. Or my favorite coffee places, where they have the punch card. Try that.
Punch cards are the next big thing, Rich. Now, how many punches is the right number on a card? Because I've gotten some of those punch cards before, and I see like the end goal is like you're going to get a free coffee. But you got to get like 20 punches to get a free coffee. And that's a lot of punches for just a free coffee. So what is the right number of punches on a punch card where it doesn't seem so daunting to complete? Is it 10? Is it 5?
10 feels like there's actually a coffee place in my neighborhood here in Seattle that does this. And 10 is there. And that feels like a good number, an attainable number. And from their perspective, it's a big enough number that they're sort of motivating you to come back on a regular basis. Because there's also this a bookstore here in Seattle that I love, but it's far enough away from me that I don't go there a lot. And especially these days, it's so easy to order online. And so I think their number is 10 as well, come to think of it. But it's going to take me a while to reach it. So it depends a little bit on what you're buying.
Yeah, and you got to look at the business too. Like we've had many loyalty cards where we get punches. And sometimes, like you said with the bookstore, it's hard to fill 10. Like a bookstore should be like 5, Maybe you got to scale down what you get in the end, but it's going to take forever to do 10 at a bookstore. Like we had like one for ice cream. There used to be an ice cream truck that would drive around the neighborhood, and they had like a punch card, and it was like 10. But, we don't buy ice cream every day, especially because the truck only came once a week. And then by the time we had enough to get a free ice cream, Rich, guess what happened?
Yeah, it's wintertime. No one wants ice cream.
Worse, they went out of business.
Oh, no. Yeah, that is worse.
So now I have a punch card for a free ice cream cone that I can't use. It will sit on my fridge, taunting me for the rest of my life. The ice cream that never was.
This almost sounds like a scam to me. Like this guy said, I'm out of business, and then he went to another neighborhood.
Right, only because he didn't want to give me a free, freedom pop or whatever the hell they call those things, or an ice cream sandwich. Rich, there's a conspiracy amongst the ice cream truck drivers. We need to uncover this. Huntress Labs, get on this.
Yeah.
We'll ask him next week. All right, we're gonna move on. We're gonna cut to a break. On the other side of this break, hopefully there is an interview, and we don't even know for sure because we're gonna come back from this break and we're gonna finish out the show. And Rich and I ourselves aren't gonna know if there's an interview in there until we go and watch this later. So stick around. We'll be right back. And welcome back to part 2 here of ChannelPro Weekly. One of the things we do here on the show frequently is talk about opportunities for channel pros out there like you. And today we're going to talk about opportunities for channel pros in regards to workplace optimization. And here to talk with us about that is Chris Thorson, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Poly. Welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Matt. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here. So for those who are not familiar with you, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So, at Poly. Now, Poly might be a new name for some people, but it's actually not a new company. We've been around for like over 50 years, right? Formerly as Plantronics. Plantronics, about 2 years ago, acquires Polycom. It's clear that these different devices that we use in the workplace are coming together, and we say, you bring the best of these video devices and desktop devices and headset devices all under one roof. And that new roof is now called Poly. My role in Poly is, as you said, Senior Director of Product Marketing. I make sure for all these new products that people know just what the heck that it is that we're bringing to the market, what problems those products solve from our entire portfolio, soup to nuts. So if you guys know what we do, then I'm doing my job. If you guys don't know what we do, hey, I got some work to do some more, and so we'll talk a little about what we can do to help folks out there.
And so were you in the Plantronics side or were you in the Polycom side? Where were you at when all this kind of came together?
Yeah, my legacy was on the Polycom side. And prior to that, I was a wireless guy, and I spent time in the channel and as a reseller, back in the day, and an integrator, and it came up through, as I said, wireless, and then desk phones, and then video products, and now adding headset products and conference phone products and everything in between.
Well, Chris, we are really excited to have you on the show here today. And, the inspiration for this interview basically was that just recently in ChannelPro, we had an article in there that was about workplace optimization and this whole, idea that workplaces, workspaces within offices are evolving and changing, have been doing so for a while. That means the technology that people are using in offices has been changing as well. And, our assumption is that means there are new opportunities for ChannelPros to introduce new kinds of services into the office. So let's just kind of start with the beginning of that story a little bit. I mean, from your perspective, how have workplaces evolved in recent years?
I mean, there's a tremendous shift that has gone on for years, and we're in the midst of now. I mean, if you look at a lot of different market dynamics that are going on, you see things like more and more workers are working at home, right? On any given day, maybe half your employees, some might say, don't even come to the office because we've made telecommuting such a great experience, and people have flexible working. They want to pick up their kids in the morning or drop them off at school or whatever it might be, and so. Companies look at that and they say, well, I've got real estate is really expensive. It is one of the most expensive, greatest expenses that a company has to deal with. And they say, if I can maybe squeeze a little bit more out of these people, how do I do that? Right? And there's a number of different ways that you can do that. One, you can just reduce your footprint. Two, that you can try to get more out of the footprint you have, right? I happen to be in my office here in Colorado today, but just right outside here, there's a lot of folks that we put in, cube environments. And they say, well, how can I maybe pack more of those people into smaller and smaller cube environments? So from a real estate perspective, they can push things down closer. You get people in tighter. But there's one problem with that, right? What's the big problem? Of course, people are the problem, right? People make noise. People distract others in the office. And so, as we look at those kind of macro changes that are pressing on the workforce to make smart decisions, to get more out of their space, for people, not coming in as often, when they come in, they're bumping into one another. And so we as manufacturers have to say, well, how do I mitigate some of those sound problems, some of those noise problems, some of those distraction problems? And we've got all kinds of different technologies that can help, lead people down those paths and just have a better work experience. Because in the end, we know happier workers, more productive workers, they're going to get more out of each and every one of their days.
Now, the other phenomenon that I hear a lot about, and I'm sure you see even more closely, is the nature of collaboration, or the spaces in which collaboration occurs in offices has been changing a lot. Now, you hear a lot about huddle spaces and, conference rooms. Ordinary meeting rooms are still there, but, precisely because the workforce is mobile and people are working from home, Everyone wants to be more connected to people outside the workplace as well. So talk a little bit about that, about the different spaces that people really want to have in their offices for collaboration now.
Absolutely. And it's kind of a continuation of that story, right? I mean, there are, this growing force of people saying, look, okay, so now, I've got all this noise going on. I need at some point to get stuff done. I need to play. And one of the solutions is to go to a different place, remove myself from the environment and say, yeah, I'm going to go to a huddle room, right? And there are, anywhere from 35 to 50 million huddle rooms, throughout the globe, depending on which numbers that you believe. So that's definitely a growing space that people want to go to. If you just, like I said, as 1 to 2 to 4 type people that you want to get away from, have a particular call for a small moment in time, and then go back to your normal work environment. Likewise, there's still the traditional conference rooms. It's like the boardroom is never going away. But the numbers that I need, and to make sure that I'm utilizing those boardrooms as best as possible. Going back to that space argument, it doesn't make sense to have room for 20 people, and most of the time it's only used by 2, right? And we can even do some things now to track how many people are using those conference rooms at any given time throughout the day, feed that data back into administrators and IT professionals to say, you know what, maybe my mix of rooms is off. Maybe I need more huddle spaces. And that's typically what people do. They convert what might be an office like this into a huddle space. Now I can be used throughout the day by a number of different people, and I just get better space utilization. Comes back once again, make the most of the real estate that I've got.
So we've got a few trends going on here. We're trying to get more mileage, more use out of that real estate. That means maybe having more people in the office. We have a greater variety of collaboration and conferencing spaces in the office now. What kind of implications does all that have for the kind of workplace technology that SMBs in particular are looking for and need these days?
Yeah, and like I said, you've got to solve that problem at kind of each point in the matrix, right? You need to think about your environment in terms of the type of work being done, who's doing that type of work. For example, I happen to be here in an engineering environment. What do you think engineers want? Shh, right? They want quiet. They want focus time, right? That's the thing that none of us get. We're all constantly, getting interrupted by our IMs that are popping off, or we've got somebody walking by getting coffee, right? And it drives engineers nuts. So I got to have spaces in the workforce, in the workplace that I know are going to be more quiet, and I got to have places that people can go, like those huddle spaces when they want to have some focus time, or when they have to have conversations that others might use. When they're in those open office environments and you want to keep that that quiet, what do? You grab stuff like this, right? Here's this happens to be our Voyager Focus headset. I put that on. I have noise cancellation on there, and when I have that helps me as the local office professional. Even if I'm not on a call, I can use that. It's like our noise cancellation you might use on an airplane, right? I just don't want to hear the engine noise. I don't want to hear the guy making coffee noise. I don't want to hear the overhead fan that be making noise. So that's one type of solution for that open office environment. Now, if I go into a huddle space environment, right now, like you might be needing to do audio, you might be needing to do video. This is one of our new Studio X30 products. And what this does, it's got speakers built in, it's got a camera built in, and it's designed for a small huddle space. So I've got everything I need to have a collaboration environment in that small huddle space. If I didn't need video, I could just use a traditional one of our Trio conference phones or something else. So you've got different products for different spaces. And then even when you're in that space, it's not just about whether it's quiet for me, it's also about whether it's quiet for the people on the other side. What do I mean by that? Well, products like this now we're building in noise block type technology. We call it our noise block AI. And so what does it? Listens to the environment around me, and it's got multiple microphones, and it can listen and say, you know what? I can tell that that's the overhead fan noise. I can tell this is Chris's voice. I'm going to listen to Chris's voice, and I'm going to cancel out all that background noise so that you guys on the far end hear a nice, clear clear sound of me, and it cancels out all that background stuff. So that's the kind of technology that we're starting to implement to make these spaces more efficient, make people really be able to focus during the times that they're on a particular meeting. And it continues to accelerate as we go up through the larger conference spaces and other environments. We can have ceiling mics that are going to pick up even just slight little whispers if you're standing in the back of the room, because we know not everybody has a big, loud, booming voice. Some people, a little mousy voice, but I still want to pick them up just as much as the person that's sitting right there next to the microphone. And I got to balance out that sound to make sure everybody is seen, everybody is heard in the environment, no matter where they go.
So we're talking about a number of different useful, interesting products for different settings in the office now. Are you advising partners to kind of bundle up some of those products, maybe wrap some services around that too, and really present it as a solution to their customers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the opportunity for partners is several-fold, right? Like, I think partners get in a lot of cases scared when they see a product like this and they say, well, there's not enough services revenue for me there, right? Because this is just one huddle space. I walk in there, I plug it in. I've got a couple of Ethernet ports and an HDMI, and I'm good to go. And they say, I can't make a lot of money on the install and support on that. But the fact is, remember we talked about those larger huddles, those rooms, they're not going anywhere. There's still service revenue for the integration work that has been done with their lighting systems and their AV control systems, and everything else that is really the traditional bread and butter of a lot of the AV partners. So that work is still there. Those numbers of rooms are still there. The difference is more of those rooms are getting lit up with video technology now. We happen to be on a Zoom call here because it's kind of that rising tide floats all boats. More people, even out to their home office using video, means more people want to have the video call at their desk or at the huddle space or in the executive boardroom or in the immersive suite. And so rather than just focusing on those big dollar suites, there's dollars to be made at all levels of where people work, from the cube environment to the huddle space and beyond.
Now, are there opportunities to integrate some of these technologies we've been talking about with other technologies that might be familiar to our audience and to their customers? Office 365, whatever it is. Do you see partners looking to connect some of these collaboration tools and some of the other tools we're talking about in with other systems that SMBs use?
Yeah, absolutely. This is really the promise that we've, as an industry, we move pretty slow. I have to admit, right? I've been in the industry 25 years now. We've been talking about, in one form or another, or one name of the other, as unified communications, right? For years it was, well, you've got separate email and voicemail and all these platforms that comes together under unified communications, and we get everybody marching that way. And the only way to deliver all that stuff is to buy it from one vendor. Well, guess what? We kind of changed the world when we started adding this element of cloud, right? Because now suddenly it doesn't necessarily have to come from one vendor. Really, we took that OSI model from, really the data guys and said, look, I can pull out each of these things. And so I can choose a best of breed endpoint. I can choose a best of breed application. I can choose a best of breed call center application. I can use a best of breed unified communications as a service, right? UCaaS player. And so that's really where the market has shifted, because it gives customers choice, so it makes sense for them. But then from our perspective, we've got to make sure that if we're going to do what we do best, which is make great human collaboration devices, we've got to make sure that those devices work with whatever platform of our customer's choice. So whether it's Microsoft Teams, whether it's it's Zoom, whether it's GoToMeeting, whether it's 8x8 or Ring Central on more of the traditional voice side or whatnot, that's really been our bread and butter, is to say we have to make great devices. We need to make sure that those devices connect to any of the major software platforms, from contact center to unified communications and collaborations, and at the same time be able to connect those to very specific industry applications. I've seen integrations where we tie video and we put it embedded inside of hospitality management systems, or put them inside of healthcare management systems, right? So that it's you call your doctor and the video pops up right away. So there's opportunities on the software integration side there. On more the hardware integration side, like I had mentioned before, turning on lights, turning on fans, turning on DVDs, projectors, overheads. There's a lot of ways that you can integrate these video systems and audio systems so that to a customer, it's one big solution. And that's where the money is to be made in the channel, is making sure you custom design these things. Because I can't do that as a manufacturer. I can't solve for every possible permutation or request a customer might have. We've got to make sure that we give them the SDKs and we give them the tools so that those channel partners out there can really do what they do best and deliver complete solutions.
Now, for the managed service providers, the MSPs in our audience, a lot of the revenue we're talking about here is either product revenue or maybe project revenue in terms of setup and integration and so on. Is there a recurring revenue element to any of these kinds of workspace, workplace optimization solutions?
I think that's really an area that is about to take off more so than we've had in the past. In part, as I mentioned, because of this trend towards the cloud, our devices are getting smarter and smarter. And you're going to see us coming out here with an announcement literally in days' time about some of our next vision of our management platform. And I think that's really going to be an area that partners can start to think about how they can monetize some of the data that we are now going to be providing them. So you'll be able to see, when I talked about the room utilization early on, right? You go into a room and you count how many people are in there, right? That's an interesting metric. But what is more interesting is to say, well, guess what? How could I make a real business decision based on that, right? Say, 50% of my rooms are unused, right? Or they're underutilized. And so maybe I need to change the mix of my rooms, and to be able to provide that data and that information out to customers and to manage these devices on an ongoing basis and say, hey, look, I've got these great tools. It looks like, these rooms you have reliability issues, right? These rooms might be going down. I can tell you when those alerts and alarms happen. If I need to roll a truck, I can. If I need to do a remote management and get into those devices and troubleshoot them off hours, maybe I reboot them every morning. Maybe I, do the software updates for you. So I think that's an area where we as manufacturers are going to start enabling partners to do more and more by taking the data that we have that's comes from the devices that are sitting in room and be able to turn those into what we call actionable insights, right? Things that are understandable, things that provide value to customers. It makes our product sticky, and it makes the value provided by our managed service providers just that much better and more valuable to their customers.
Now, for somebody listening or watching right now who is not doing any of this kind of work today, but is, sees the applicability to their customers, is maybe interested in getting started, what kinds of skills are you going to need to be able to do some of these conference room, huddle space, workspace kinds of solutions, and how hard is it to acquire those skills?
It's getting easier and easier to acquire those skills every day, right? As the products get simpler, like that is one of the great things that has happened over, let's say, the last 15 years with the consumerization of IT. Things have to be made more simple. We recognize that as a manufacturer, and we know that because our customers are demanding it. It's because it's what they see in their everyday devices at home, right? They're able to do video at home. They're like, hey, if I can do video on my phone, why can't I do video in the office, right? If I've got this simple to use interface that my 4-year-old can make a call, why can't I get that same type of simple UI from my enterprise collaboration systems, right? So it's been forcing us to make the product simpler. That means the training, the certification. In some cases where we would used to send somebody through 2, 3, 4-day on-site class, now might be just a couple of hours online web certification, or in some cases, maybe there's no certification requirements at all. So those things are coming down. Now, of course, if you want to get into the higher level audio video integration, you've got rooms that have got glass walls and audio that's bouncing all over the place. You've got to go to class to understand how those things work. Like that's something that you would probably go to a live class. But for the majority of products these days, it really is more about how do I do the install physically, and how do I do the few, a lot of the auto provisioning resources are making that even simpler. So just making sure you know how to provision this stuff, do your settings and management updates. So it's getting easier and easier and easier. We have a Poly University for ourselves that you would go to acquire those skills. But you as a channel partner should expect these things to be getting easier and easier over time. But make no mistake about it, there'll always be this subset of kind of the traditional, it's complex deployments that you'll have to have some higher level functions. But it's not like everybody or every one of your engineers is going to have that certification.
Yeah, and for the revenue opportunity, I know you're saying that you're working on different options to make these a little bit more recurring and to plug into more systems. But there is revenue opportunity today, right? I always talk about peripherals and how there's usually high margin. What are the margins in your products?
I'm not a sales margin guy. I'll have to leave that over to the guys that are out there on the street. But I can tell you, whether it's video devices. I mean, the video devices margins have historically been built when we build our channel models to make sure that our partners can make money selling these devices. Right? We know that the units that they sell are lesser. So we know that the training that it takes to deploy those units is higher. So we know that there's an investment for our partners to be made. And so we know that we have to deliver higher margins on those products. When we look at other categories of our products, like our phone products, margins are a little bit low. We know this; it's a high volume play. We have a fewer number of high volume partners, and so margins are a little thinner there. And headsets is a little bit in between, right? It's got a bit of a consumer model there, but it's still a margin-rich product there. But now you're talking thousands of units, so the unit count goes way up versus either the phones or the video products. So we try to look at that margin mix. We do and are always conscious of can our partners make money with these things, and we've been a company that historically, we've not gone direct in any sense. Our channel and our salespeople are all high touch sellers, so they're channel engaged but fulfill, or they're customer engaged but they fulfill through the channel. Is our approach, and I think we've got a few replacement spares and things that you can buy direct on our e-commerce site, but that's not really our primary go-to-market.
Yeah, I've heard about some partners that have taken setups like these and headsets and have kind of adopted an as-a-service model. Do you have any of your partners that are selling your products as a service?
We do. That's a very good question, and thanks for reminding me. We do have a device as a service. We're really the first that I know in either the phone, video, or headset business to offer a device as a service offering to our partners. We started that up about 2.5 years ago. We started on the phones. This last year, in I think a September timeframe, we added the headsets and video products to that market. It's been a slow uptick. It's been primarily our mid-market customers that have taken advantage of that, or mid-market or mid-tier service providers. But yeah, they're the guys that say, look, I don't want to have to ask my customers to make a big capital outlay for devices up front. I just want to charge them a monthly fee. I want to tack it onto the fee that I already have. So we've been doing that. We've got a number of partners already on it. If people are interested in that, they can certainly reach out to myself and we can connect them to the right folks in our department. But it's not I want to make a point. It's not just a lease, right? Our program is a true as a service rental program. Customer signs up, they can cancel at any time. So we haven't locked them into 18, 24 months kind of thing. They can go, they don't like it after 3 months, and they can knock it out. And we also have a built-in hardware replacement plan within that. So it's a very unique offer, and it's one that we have seen some good traction with in the industry. But we'd love for more people to go there, because that's how our customers that I talk to are more accustomed to consuming services like software services today, and this just gives us that bridge into some recurring revenue streams.
Yeah, and so many customers these days, especially those who work with managed service providers, they get very used to the "why do I need to own this stuff" kind of approach. Why can't I just pay one monthly fee, and if it breaks, you replace it, and I just give you money every month, and life is good.
So I think it's going to be really interesting, because, like I said, I've been in this market for quite some time, and the pendulum currently right now is everything as a service. And then at some point, some finance guy's going to do the numbers, and they're going to go, we're spending how much money every month? What if we just bought this stuff and we didn't have to spend all this money every month? I guarantee that's going to happen. The pendulum's going to start to swing back at some point. But right now it is all as a service, and in the end, it'll be a mix of some somewhere in between. But it's just funny how that is right now. That's all the rage. That's all the trend. That's what people want. We'll see as markets change over time. If I'm right, maybe I'm totally wrong. I don't know. But I think there's a rationale for both, right? I think smaller companies are probably going to be more likely to be as a service. I think there are some large institutions that don't want to deal with the headache of devices, and guys in between. We'll see where they land.
Yeah, it's a big market out there. I'm sure there's all kinds of opportunity. Now, the last question that I wanted to ask you is regarding huddle spaces in particular. You said that when people walk into a huddle space, it's good that they have everything they have. When they walk out of a huddle space, do they have to yell break?
Do they have to yell break? Oh, yeah. Well, the funny thing is, we think that we're like, oh yeah, a bunch of Americans. But I go over to I go over to UK, or I'm about to head over to ISE over at Amsterdam, right? And we say huddle spaces, and for the longest time, they're like, huddle. What is huddle? What is this concept huddle? I'm like, yeah, you huddle up, and they're like, what do you mean? And we're like, yeah, football. They're like, who huddles up in soccer, right? So it just does not land internationally at all. Although we've kind of internationalized the huddle term, that I think everybody now knows what those silly Americans mean when they talk about huddle spaces. So I guess that's one of now our exports is huddling.
And it's a good one. And I'm glad you actually picked up on the joke, because that could have gone sideways. It's really quickly.
I get there.
So, well, that's good. Well, I think we're out of time. Thank you so much for coming on and joining us and talking about this. It's great to see that there's companies really devoted into making the collaboration side better, and working with the channel in a way to make it lucrative and profitable as well.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much. And we're going to take a break. When we come back, I have a museum pick for you and a tech pick. We're going to wrap up the show with Rich telling us what has been and what will be. So stick around for that. We will be right back. And we are back with part 3 of ChannelPro Weekly. Hopefully, you just heard an interview with Chris Thorson, the Senior Director of Marketing at Poly, formerly Polycom. If that interview was not there, because Rich and I have no idea if it really was or not, we will have that interview for you another week, maybe next week, maybe the week after, but hopefully it was there. So you're just as surprised as we are. That's what I got to say. And if it wasn't there, we will send everybody a coupon for a free interview after you listen to 10 episodes and fill your punch card.
Right. Yeah.
For ChannelPro Weekly. We need ChannelPro Weekly punch cards, Rich.
If we fail to deliver an interview 10 times, the 11th one is on us.
Not bad for a show that's already free to begin with. That's awesome. Yes, ChannelPro. We need ChannelPro Weekly punch loyalty cards. Like every time you listen to 10 episodes, you get another episode for free.
Yeah. The more you listen, the more you save, people.
Yes, this is a marketing campaign in progress, folks. We will let you know what shakes out. So we're going to go ahead and move on. I do have a museum pick for y'all this week and a tech pick Rich is going to break down what was and what will be. But first, the museum pick. So for those who are new to the show, welcome. I am so glad you're here. Something that everybody who has been listening for a while knows about me, and we started this, Rich, in episode 7?
The museum pick?
Yeah.
It may even have been episode 1.
We might have mentioned, we went a few without it, but I know it was very, very early on in the show. It was discovered by all that I have really a hoarding problem, and the inability to throw away anything that has circuit boards, electrical plugs, LCD screens, or buttons. Meaning like tech buttons, not like shirt buttons. I'm not talking about those kind of buttons. But yeah, I have just an enormous amount of like stuff from the past that I still kind of hang on to, which my excuse to my wife is that it lets me illustrate to the progression of technology and kind of see what it was and how it changed and evolved. And that's pretty cool. It's really just because I just can't throw it away because I love it so much. And Rich has seen my house. He will see it again. He knows it's sad. So I will either be on an episode of Hoarders someday or I will be in a mental institution. Either way, my wife wins. So anyway, so my museum pick this week, I like to pick one out and kind of talk about it and explain what it was and what it did, and then usually relate it to something that's kind of new today. So, Rich, we haven't talked about this company in a while because this company's kind of gone. I went back and looked at the notes. We talked about them in episode 25 when they kind of closed their business cloud kind of service, and I think they're pretty much done completely at this point. But I'm going to talk about Pogoplug. You remember Pogoplug? I do. Well,
tell folks about Pogoplug.
So Pogoplug is a company that was all about trying to make a personal, to kind of bring like the cloud file sync and share, file access kind of experience, but kind of bring it more in-house. You could have your own private cloud. And they eventually kind of evolved to actually like having cloud storage, and they also evolved to like a business class tiers. And we actually used them for a little while back in the day here at ChannelPro because I was a big fan of Pogoplug. I had one. Originally, they started with they started at a time where cloud storage existed, like Google Drive existed, OneDrive existed, and Dropbox existed, but they were incredibly expensive if you had a large amount of files to store, right? If you have 2 gigs, back then you had 2 gigs of files, you could probably get away with one of those storage services. But what if you had like a terabyte, right? Or 500 gigabytes of stuff that you wanted to make accessible remotely? Well, it was extremely cost prohibitive, if not impossible, to do it with the big services. So Pogoplug came up with the idea of a personal cloud. And the device that they made to make that happen, this is the original one. I'm holding it up to the front of the camera here. And for those who are listening, it's a small white box. It actually looks like one of those wall wart things that you would like hit on the plug that you plug into something else, an AC to DC transformer for a device. I don't have the plug part in it that connects it, but it was actually like a wall wart that went to the wall. And on the bottom of it, there was a network jack and a USB connection. And this came out around the time when like Marvell had their kind of pluggable PC kind of models, and that's exactly what this is based on. But the idea was, is you plug this in your house, you would connect it to your network, you would plug in a USB storage device, ideally something bigger than what you would get for free in the public cloud, but like a big hard drive, for example, and then you create a Pogoplug account, so a little bit of software on your computer, and poof, everything that was on that drive instantly became available and browsable on your computer anywhere you are in the world. That was the whole idea. So just like cloud storage, like I can go sit in a cafe and open up my computer today, and for example, we use OneDrive for business here, and I can see everything in my OneDrive, and in a couple clicks, I can download it or work with it. Well, that's what this enabled, but the cloud was private. The cloud wasn't a public cloud, so there was some security-related niceties there for people who weren't comfortable with the public cloud and wanted to have control over not only the data itself, but also the storage device that was holding it. So that was the idea. You'd plug it into the little Pogoplug, and poof, all your data was there. And I used this thing for years and years. It was great. Did you ever have anything like this, or were you always, Rich, a public cloud kind of guy?
I don't think I had anything quite like that. No. I mean, there were various kinds of external storage, but nothing that was visible on the cloud. So no, I missed that. There was a whole wave of those products, right? I mean, personal clouds, I think, was what they were often referred to. I know Western Digital had one, and I'm blanking on the name, but there were a few vendors out there that had systems like that did exactly what Pogoplug did. But
yeah, and Pogoplug is the one that kind of started it. A lot of the big hard drive companies, it was a natural fit for a Western Digital or a Seagate to just start kind of adding these features to their drives as time went on. And that was one of the things that started to push Pogoplug into offering the business aspect. And they had some really cool things for sharing. So we could have later on for some of the other Pogoplug models, you could have multiple drives connected, and then you could have folders that were shared amongst a team. And we were using that kind of functionality internally for a little while. And it was fun. So they kind of started that wave. And then today, the personal clouds still exist, and they're mostly provided by the hard drive, personal hard drive manufacturers and companies. And then of course, there's a lot of solutions for offering businesses cloud, kind of private cloud storage that's all ran in house. That's kind of been around for a while, and there's a lot of cool devices for that. But this was kind of the fun one that started it off, and they had other models that came out after this one. And I've got a couple, at least one, which is one of the one we were using when ChannelPro was using this for a little while. Excuse me. But this was the one that started all, the little white Pogoplug. I would dare say, Rich, revolutionary at the time. And the other cool thing is that there was no cost, right? So I bought the plug, and there was no fees beyond that in order to use it. So that was also great for consumers. And one of the reasons why it was used, personally, I used it for so long, is it offered all this great functionality, and all I had to do was buy the unit, and then everything else was just, it didn't cost anything, because I wasn't really using them for anything. There was the only real service they were providing was an easy locator to find the device via like an account. So I have an account, it knows my thing, and then I didn't have to open up ports on the firewall in order to access this thing, because it would handle all that through the account. So pretty fun stuff.
Did you mention what the capacity of that particular model was?
Well, that's the cool thing. This didn't have a capacity. And that's one of the things that made Pogoplug great. The capacity was whatever size hard drive I stuck into it. Now at the time, or plugged into it, at the time, I seriously doubt there was anything beyond a 4 terabyte hard drive. And I would dare say 2 might have been the cap. But I had a 500 gigabyte USB hard drive plugged in, because it's whatever you plugged in right here. So even if you just had a 256 meg flash drive, you could plug that into it, and that would be your storage. That was it. But I had a 500 gig hanging off this for a very, very long time, that was used to share photos and to access documents, and I had a lot of my work files in there for a long time back in my previous employment days. And yeah, it was cool stuff. And it's flexible. And if the hard drive died, well, you wanted more storage, you just unplugged it and plug in a new hard drive, move your files over to it, and poof, you now have more storage, and it costs $0.
I will tell you the truth. I had mixed feelings when I saw on the show sheet that you were going to be talking about the Pogoplug and the museum pick slot here, because it doesn't feel like all that long ago when you first introduced me to this product. I'm just guessing. I don't know. I mean, it had to have been at least 5 years, but whatever. 5 years, 7 years. It doesn't feel like ancient history, and yet now it is in the museum. And am I a museum piece as well at this point? I mean... it's crazy.
Some days I feel like it, Rich. I feel like I belong in a museum. The Pogo EO1. I'm trying to remember exactly what date it came out. And you know what, Rich? Why don't you talk for 5 seconds, and I will figure out the exact date that was released.
Research is underway here, folks. But yeah, I do remember. In fact, I think the time Matt introduced me to this product was when we were preparing the ballot for our very first Reader's Choice Awards. And so that's a big deal, a landmark on the calendar here, where we ask our readers to vote in all these different categories. And there was a category, I can't remember if it was BDR or storage, but Matt said, hey, we should put Pogoplug on this. And everybody else at ChannelPro was like, what's that? Um,
And it was very useful for a while, was it not?
yeah.
I mean, it was great. It was really kind of before we had a good kind of file sync and share solution. Obviously, we've moved on since then, but it really did work well, and it was low cost. It wasn't expensive by any means. But at the time, the drive for that was sitting in my basement. But we had, for a very, very low cost, lots of storage accessible to us that was available anywhere in the world. So according to this, January 7th, 2009 was when they unveiled this little white bad boy here. So more than 10 years ago, 11 years, actually a little more than 11 years ago, was when this one came out. And there were newer models that came out later that offered a little bit more flexibility, more USB drives. You could have multiple drives and stuff plugged into it. One, I believe, that had Wi-Fi. Because none of these had Wi-Fi. They were hardwired network access only, which for what it is, like, who cares? You can put it next to your router and plug it in. They weren't expecting these to be sitting on people's desks, needing Wi-Fi access. So pretty cool stuff. Pretty cool stuff. So that was my museum pick, my tech pick. Well, that was then, this is now. And you know what? There is still a market for personal cloud. There are lots of people who do not want to, A, pay for high amounts of cloud storage, and B, some people just don't want their stuff. They want control, right? It's all about control for a lot of people. I know where my files are. I know they're on this drive in my house. They're not going anywhere, but I still want access to them. And there's a lot of companies that have gone to fill the gap by offering kind of the remote access to these hard drives. So the one that I've picked is a purpose-built product that is kind of for building your own personal cloud. And I've chosen a Buffalo product for that. It's the LinkStation 210. They have some different size capacities. Now, this one of the nice parts about the Pogoplug was that the drive wasn't a part of the deal, so you could kind of choose what size you wanted because you would have to add whatever drive you wanted to it. These are like built into an external hard drive. So you kind of have to choose how much capacity you want up front. There's a 2 terabyte, there's a 4 terabyte. I believe there's an 8 terabyte model as well. And these are single drive units. They're pretty inexpensive. They start around $150. They go up, I believe it's about $249. So that's like the most equivalent I can kind of come up with to a Pogoplug today, is a single drive external unit. If you're going to go that route, though, I would highly, highly recommend you go to a 2 drive model, like the LinkStation 220. So I guess I have two museum picks, but the 220 offers 2 hard drives, and they can be set up so that way you have some redundancy between the drives. So if one fails, you do not lose everything, because folks, especially those who are in IT, know it is not a matter of if the drive will fail. It is a matter of when. All hard drives will fail. Now, I've had some that have lasted 10 years, Rich, believe it or not. Some rare ones. I've also had drives that have lasted less than 10 minutes. So anytime you can have drive redundancy, it is good for your safety of your data, that you don't lose your stuff. What do you think of that pick?
I like that pick. I'm on the Buffalo product page for that right now, actually. So one thing worth mentioning is that, like the Pogoplug, this comes with a free cloud service, which is nice. And then I also notice, interestingly enough, that it also comes with a built-in BitTorrent client.
Well, that's handy, because sure, then you don't have to worry about throwing a torrent into your PC and having it run on your computer. You can just throw it right into your disk. Because is torrenting still a big thing? I guess it is. For lots of nefarious and non-nefarious applications, I'm sure.
I really don't know. It feels like I come across that name regularly still, but I don't know if people have moved on to other technologies, maybe.
Yeah, I remember, back before there was a streaming service for everything, lots of torrenting was in use for acquiring copyrighted materials. But there's a lot of companies that have distribute large file sets via BitTorrent because it's much more efficient for the downloader on the other end to get them quicker. So yeah, pretty cool stuff. So I like the LinkStation product. I've used plenty of Buffalo products over the years, and they always have great support. I always like how they work. They always make sense to me, and they're always easy to set up. So check those out. The LinkStation 210, and I really do recommend upgrading to the 220 to get the extra hard drive. either you can use for more storage or that you can ideally use it to replicate the drive so you don't lose anything. But yeah, check those products out. We will have links to those on the show notes page. And so that was our museum pick, the Pogoplug, and our tech pick, the Buffalo LinkStation. Rich, you work with Mr. Gaskin, and Mr. Gaskin goes out and he looks at all of the other stories that we may not have gotten to, and he posts them for your enjoyment. Well, not your enjoyment, like our listeners and readers' enjoyment. What does he have in store for us this week?
Well, yes, indeed. Every Friday, in fact, our own contributing editor, James Gaskin, pulls together news from the week that was that may have escaped your attention in his In Case You Missed It post. The week is still actually relatively young as we record this week. We normally record on a Thursday. It's a Wednesday morning now, but there have been some interesting announcements from Avaya and SAP that he will be rounding up for you. There's some interesting security research out there this week, so you're going to want to check that out. Now, in terms of what's coming up next week, which is the other thing people want to know about, actually, there are a number of things going on. So this year's IT Expo conference in Fort Lauderdale, which is actually co-located with events for MSPs and IoT integrators. The BICSI conference, BICSI conference for telco and IT partners in Tampa, Florida.
That has to do something with shaving, right? The BICSI conference.
Yeah, that third conference may be taking place someplace else in Florida. But what do those two conferences I just named have in common, by the way? They are both going to be attended by our own tireless colleague, Joel Zaidspinner. So I'm sure we will hear some details from him on what was going on at those conferences. There is a Microsoft IoT in Action event right in your backyard in Chicago, Matt, next week. And CompTIA is doing its annual federal advocacy event. It's called CompTIA on the Hill. Now, this all takes place in Washington, D.C. They reach out to members of Congress. They hold conference sessions and so on. I believe this used to be called the Fly-In, and now they're calling it CompTIA on the Hill. So that's all next week here in our industry.
Fantastic. Well, lots to look forward to. So that's going to bring us to the close here of ChannelPro Weekly. I'd like to again thank thank you to our sponsor, Corporate Armor, and their Connect and Fix product for sponsoring episode 133. We really appreciate that. So a big thank you to them. Now, Rich, people need to understand that you do not have to wait, and everybody should be on the website every day anyway, because on ChannelProNetwork.com, we got news stories, we got articles, we got white papers coming up all the time on ChannelProNetwork.com. But you don't have to monitor the website in order to know if we post a new episode of ChannelPro Weekly. The best way to do that is to go to Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, now Spotify, anywhere where podcasts are aggregated, and put them in and subscribe there. So that way, when you're on the train or in the car, poof, new episode comes out. It's just there. Instantly, you hit play, so that way you can listen along while you do whatever you're doing. I like to listen to podcasts in the background while I work or while I'm driving, while I'm mowing the grass. Not that I'm doing a lot of that right now, but doing the dishes. That is a great way to listen and learn and have a good time with us while you do that. If you do like to watch, you should subscribe to both, because you may as well. We're on YouTube. You can subscribe there, and if you want to get notifications for new episodes, you got to hit the bell and then all. There's a multi-step process now to do that, but subscribe, bell, all, and then anytime we have a new episode that comes out, you will be notified, and you can go and you can look at our bright, smiley faces. Rich, give him a nice smile.
Sure thing.
Look at that, folks. How can you not want to watch that smile each and every day? And also, you can see the interviews that we do with our guests, which is also a lot of fun. So do that. So ChannelProNetwork.com again is the website. We are on the social networks. We are Channel Pro Network on Facebook and LinkedIn. We are at ChannelPro SMB on Twitter. Our email address is podcast@channelpronetwork.com. So make sure if you have any questions, comments, we'd love to hear from you. So fire off an email and let us know what you think or what you want us to talk about or anything you want to say, and we'll say it on the air. Rich will say anything. I've tested it many, many times. It doesn't even matter if it's like completely inappropriate. He'll say it because he just doesn't care. No, I'm kidding. Just totally mess with him. So do that. Rich, if people wanted to follow you on the socials, where would they find you?
Well, on Twitter, they would find me at @RichFree.
That's where he is. I am at Matt Whitlock on Twitter, so you can follow me there. And that is going to wrap it up for episode 133. Look forward to episode 134, where we'll have, who did you say, Rich?
Kyle Hanselvan, CEO of Huntress Labs. Very interesting conversation about MSP security.
And will he be on for an interview? Or is that just a guest host, or will he be guest hosting?
That will be an interview segment. Our guest host next week is Rob Bowles of Blockworks, a 100% security-focused solution provider, and he will be he's a great guest, just a great guy. He'll be a lot of fun to have on the show, but he's a perfect guest host for next week because he'll be participating in the interview with Kyle Hanselvan.
Oh, that's going to be a great show, folks. Do not miss that one. It is going to be stellar. So, on behalf of Rich and everyone here at Channel Pro, this is Channel Pro Weekly. We'll see you all next week.